Welcome everybody to What the Tech, episode 101, the second show of the new year and the second show from the newly built studio. I'm Zarian. I'm joined by Paul Thurrott, as I am each and every week. How you doing, Paul?
Still looks weird to me.
The studio or you?
No. Well, I always look weird to me. I mean, the studio.
Yeah, it's still.
I like it. I just has to get used to it.
You know what? I'm having a really difficult time because normally I would have this entire view for like the chat room and everything, but now I'm missing it. Right. So I have no access to like anything that's happening. So I have to figure something out here where I can maybe build like a portable screen and just monitor everything.
Right.
It's very difficult for me to adjust. I'm kind of used to stuff being the way it is. But this is the show where Paul and I generally complain about technology.
Right.
Because that's what somebody told me this week. If you go to our website, gfqlive.tv, we're broadcasting live there. We have a great interactive chat room. About 51 people in there right now and should shoot up as the show goes on. And you can remember to change your nickname in there. If you click on menu and change your nickname, you could change your name right there. This is a post-CES show. We did a CES like a CES recap show last week, but there wasn't much.
CES is like Steve Jobs. You know, we can't stop talking about it.
Yeah, but you know what? I wrote a column for a magazine. I'm gonna be writing for monthly now, and they told me to write something about CES, and they go, write about what you like there. And I'm like, man, I didn't like anything.
Yeah. How much space do I have for this? Because it's not going to be that long.
I pretty much described, I quoted you, of course, because you had one of the greatest quotes about CES, describing it as two bored booth girls kicking around a soccer ball. And
that was my highlight.
Yeah. And I quoted you, and I'm like, a great tech journalist and a friend of mine, Paul Thurrott, said, but it was just awful. I mean, am I wrong? Like, do you think there was anything?
I wonder. I have to tell you, I do wonder if I have been doing this for so long and have become so jaded that I can't appreciate this thing for what it is. But yeah, it wasn't that great. I mean, it was all of the stuff we thought it would be. Lots of tablets, lots of Ultrabooks. We knew that. I tend to cover the Microsoft stuff, of course. And from that perspective, there wasn't a lot of new news there. There was some Kinect stuff, basically, Xbox 360. But they reiterated a lot of things we already knew about, Windows 8 and Windows Phone. And that was, unfortunate, a little boring.
I'll give you an example. Like Anthony P. in our chat room said there was a cool transparent screen, which, that's a really cool thing. But the things that are really cool will never appear.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem. Like the things that I've always been impressed by at CES, and even realistic things. I'm talking about like that Lenovo tablet that we're kind of seeing now coming out slowly. But like I was impressed with that 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, CES is interesting because the point of it, as I understand it, is it's designed to be a showcase for the consumer-oriented technology that's coming out sometime in this calendar year. And so by nature, a lot of that stuff tends to come out in the holiday season, which is 9 months or more away from now. Mm-hmm. Not all of it. The Ultrabook stuff will start shipping February, March, April as we go forward. A small number of things announced at the show will ship even sooner, perhaps.
Yeah.
But there are two extremes of CS. There's the stuff like you just described that's never going to happen, or is going to happen so far down the road it doesn't even matter. Or the stuff that Microsoft likes to talk about, which is the past. They like to do the momentum type meetings or keynotes. And I don't know, CS to me is in the middle of that stuff. It's supposed to be about the coming year.
Yeah.
And I think that's the stuff we should be focused on. That's the stuff that people should focus on, and that's what the show should focus on. That's the point. It's to get people excited about stuff that's coming this year so that they can plan what they're going to buy.
I mean, if we look at like the big news from CES, of course, one was the Ultrabook category, which we expected and which was announced last year. The inexpensive tablets, and I kind of in this article, and you know what? Let me reference it, Paul, because I had a lot of my good points.
My tirade against the gadget blogs.
Yours and mine are very similar because
we are kindred spirits.
Which is weird. Let me go to this gmail.com. It's in. I wrote it in Google Docs, by the way.
Excellent.
Yeah. And then I converted to Word, and everything was quadruple spaced. That's a whole separate issue that I want to rant about. That's going to be my next article, my next
Just
column.
make sure you blame Google on that one.
Yeah, so I pretty much described, let me pull this up here. There we go. I go, maybe I'm just difficult to impress since I cover technology for a living, but this year's CES was a bust. CES has become an overhyped event that's 6 days too long and only serves the purpose of creating ad revenue for snarky 20-year-old bloggers who have never been laid and want to drink all they want at Vegas.
So that was considerably more to the point than what I wrote.
A little more to the point than you were. But I mean, that's what it's become. And every website, and you had a great point. Why are we covering headphones for like 15 posts? Like, you go to one of these blogs, it's just 15 posts of headphone after headphone being represented by some like former rapper.
As if this were, I know. Well, I get this feeling that these gadget blogs are like the modern, world version of a sweatshop. That these guys are paid per view or something, and the more posts they make, the more money they make. And of course, they're being paid to or are paying to be at this place, and they have to justify that. So they just go to town, and all I can do is say, look, I get it. I'm an old guy. I'm getting old. I know that. But when I started doing my WinInfo newsletter 15 years ago or whatever that was, I specifically designed it to be a news digest. My point was, you don't need to know all the stuff that's out there because most of it is crap. So the service I was going to provide was I was going to break it down and only show you the stuff that mattered, which is the exact opposite of what these people do, and is why I can't stand that stuff. So
I mean, somebody said it's a gadget show. Yeah, it's a gadget show of sorts, but I think we've kind of...
You know what? No, it's not a gadget show.
It's become one.
It hasn't. There's a lot more to CES that we don't actually get to see because those people don't cover it. A lot of CES is the stuff like car technology, right? Which has turned into gadget technology because now we all plug our iPhones into cars and stuff. But that's actually not the point of it at all. It's not about gadgets. Gadgets are sort of a modern trend, and I'm sure gadgets will always be with us. But gadgets really are only part of it. The reason Microsoft was keynoting CES for so many years, and they had no gadgets to speak of 10 years ago, was because at that time, modern for the day consumer technology was personal computing, not gadgets. So gadgets are part of what's part of a wider story.
Yeah, I mean, the coverage was so bizarre to some of these sites, and I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but I was really at the point where I was wondering if these companies are getting kickbacks, like these blogs are getting kickbacks by talking about this ridiculous product. Sure. That should be, one thing that Engadget does.
The other thing that occurs is a lot of these guys get these products for review.
Yeah.
A lot of these goons, that's how they get paid.
That's how they get. Yeah, they keep the product.
So it's just disgusting. It's like
One thing that I always look forward to is Engadget's coverage of like the crap at CES, which I think they do a good job with that.
Yeah, you know what that site is called? Engadget. That's where they cover the crap.
But I like the stuff that they're like, well, this is an awful product, and you'll never see it, and it's absolutely stupid. Yep. And they didn't even do a good job with that. Like, they didn't even bother with that as much as they have in previous years, and I'm surprised. Like, it almost felt like people went there, they had an unbelievable time, they partied, they drank, they ate, and then the tech stuff was secondary. Right. It wasn't a big deal. Like, you know what? I covered a little bit, and now this is it. Now I'm going to make some snarky comment about, how everybody needs a headphone.
Right.
That was just my vibe this year. But again, is it the fact that there wasn't much to cover, or was it the fact that people weren't covering? What
I
is
wasn't there, so how could I say? I've been there many, many times. When I go to CES or any of these shows, CES. Let's talk about CES. I cover it for my audience, and that's what they do too, right? Their audience is gadget lovers,
And my audience is your audience because I have none.
Okay, but I mean, traditionally in years past, I would look for the stuff that was around the Windows PC, stuff that was occurring around there. In subsequent years, of course, Microsoft has branched out into, they have the Xbox 360. They had the Zune devices for a while. They've got Windows Phone now. There have been these kind of offshoots, The problem is when you decide that you're going to cover gadgets, you're covering products that are released hundreds each day, and you can only give a couple of seconds to anything, and then you move on and you completely forget about it. Mm-hmm. That also is against the way I do things, because I tend to write series of articles about a particular topic. I tend to cover things more in depth. I tend to actually give a crap about something and not just, write about it and then move on to the next thing.
Like I'll give you one example. One thing that I really was impressed, and we spoke about it last year, was this inexpensive tablet. And I refer to it as the rebirth of sorts for the Android tablet, because by having tablets that are $168, and we all know it's not as good as the iPad, right? Let's not compare it to that.
Do we though?
Let's compare. Let's just say. Let's just assume it's not as good as the iPad. I'm just gonna go by that assumption.
Yeah. Okay.
This device still has the potential of kicking the iPad's ass because it's $169. And this really, and one of the points that I make is, what does this do to the Kindle? Because the Kindle Fire is, the one now, because it's inexpensive. But we are seeing tablets that have a camera, and they have a lot of like the good stuff, and they're running Ice Cream Sandwich, and they're $150, $160, $200. This is going to change the market.
But the one thing you need to understand about Amazon is that Amazon, unlike other tablet makers, could actually afford to take a loss on each device because they make money on the content. And it's not just the ebook content; it's the videos and the other stuff, and the music and all the stuff that they sell through this store.
No, but the point is that it's not just this one tablet that could compete. It's multiple tablets.
And actually, I have to say, of all the stuff about CES, to me, the big epiphany was I expected a year ago for there to be cost-effective tablets, and it didn't happen. I was shocked by this. And people would write me because get all these kind of like Apple goons out there in the world who are like, oh, all you do is dump on Apple, and no. Apple's products are very expensive. I'm not dumping on Apple. I'm saying this thing is too expensive. I cannot believe no one else has released a product that can compete with this thing on price.
Sure.
So I expected that to happen last year. Now, I also expected it to happen this year. But I have to say, the one surprise was the sheer volume of products that don't just undercut Apple, but seriously undercut Apple. And that was really kind of an epiphany because that does change everything.
No, it does change everything. And now instead of people saying, I'm going to go buy an iPad because that's the go-to one, people are going to start buying, Toshiba tablets that could compete, and the Acer Iconia and the ViewSonic. But here's where I got really angry at these blogs. When this thing came out, at first people were saying, this is really good because it gives us an option, and these are pretty decent tablets. They're not running the highest resolution screens, but they are much better than what we have currently. A day later, every one of these sites that praised this tablet came out and said, "Well, it's a piece of crap because the screen resolution isn't as good as the iPad." Well, it's 1/3 the price.
There are arguments that happen among what I call the technorati that are not arguments that occur in real life. And this is something I have a hard time with on almost a daily basis, whether it's on Twitter or whatever else, where people have these arguments in their head and that these things seem important to them. And what they don't understand is that to normal people, these things are not considerations in the slightest. I would even go out on a limb and say most people who want a tablet probably do want an iPad. But the flip side of that is most people who want an iPad can't actually afford an iPad.
Yeah.
And when the iPad is the only game in town, or you can buy a similarly priced Android tablet, an identically priced Android tablet, you're going to buy the iPad,
Yeah, sure. Of course you're going to buy it.
Even if you can't afford it in some cases, which is sad, but that happens all the time.
Well, why do you think we're in the position we're in now?
People are stupid. So, okay. So now that there are tablets out there that are significantly less expensive, not just less expensive, but significantly less, people stop buying with their heart because now they can afford something that's decent. It's not just okay. It's not just barely passable. It's fine. And this is the kind of thing that this is what happened in the PC market with the Mac. And eventually what's going to happen is those tablets aren't just going to be fine and acceptable and good enough and whatever. They're actually going to be just as good.
Yeah,
and they're going to cost hundreds less. And actually, it's happening right now. It's already happening.
I don't think CES is relevant anymore, in my opinion. I mean, we're in the situation where, first of all, everything at CES is leaked 4 days before the actual thing comes out.
Well, leaked, not really leaked. It's
they're putting it out.
The companies are doing it, and they're doing it specifically so they don't get lost in the din of CES. So you saw companies like Lenovo and Nokia did this, AT&T and other companies, where they announced their products. And Lenovo did a staged rollout of all of their announcements over the week before CES. It was actually really humorous to me to see that happen.
I'm just amazed that they're doing this. And somebody brought up Microsoft in the room. They go, Microsoft, they're leaving next year. And yeah, this was the last CES for now for Microsoft. And I actually ripped into them too, because they took that entire time to display the power of Kinect with Sesame Street. I mean, that's what stood out to me. And this is why I'm going to hit Microsoft a little bit, Paul. I'm sorry. This is why I'm going to hit it.
Okay.
We have this revolutionary operating system coming out at the end of the year that's going to change the way that the PC is used and computing is done. I think for the long run. I mean, we're leaving this traditional Windows environment, and this is the first step into that next modern OS. And they provided as little information as they could about it.
Yeah, they sure did.
And I was, one would say, they want to do it on their own time, and maybe they didn't have much to say now.
No, screw that. You're being too nice to them.
I am being a little nice. I don't want to hurt their feelings.
Let me look at and then possibly read what I wrote today in an editorial that will appear in a print magazine later on, because I feel very strongly about this topic. I wrote, since last month, Microsoft has done an admirably lousy job of communicating its plans for Windows 8 to the public and ignoring pleas for it to fully reveal its plans. In its final Consumer Electronics Show keynote address in January, for example, Microsoft didn't discuss any new information about Windows 8 at all, choosing instead to simply reiterate what it had revealed months earlier in September 2011 when it delivered the Windows 8 developer preview. The message here, it seems, is that Windows 8 is on a need-to-know basis, and those outside the Windows team simply don't need to know.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a world, you're on the world stage at this moment. Everybody's covering CES. People that don't know anything about technology is covering CES. Why not give something?
And they didn't say anything. So that tells me that the people responsible for marketing this thing to the world either don't know what they're doing or are being shouted down by the people who run the show there at Microsoft, whatever it is. Microsoft believes that this veil of secrecy thing that works so well for Apple is going to work for it, and that's not the case at all. Apple is a consumer electronics company that speaks to individuals, consumers. Microsoft is not. And they are targeting that market with Windows 8 by and large, by the way. I mean, their business plans, as far as I understand it, is to just be a slightly better version of Windows 7 for businesses. But the big innovation, the big change is all coming for people, for consumers. This is not this is not a definite win for them. I mean, I don't really feel that they have that much of a lock over that market. I think they're making a big mistake by not talking about this stuff. Now, on the other hand, I was watching a video that someone took at CES, and there was a bank of Windows 8 machines, or tablets and laptops and everything. And you could see the start screen and how that thing is evolving and how nice it looks. And I see it every day. I use Windows 8, but it reminded me that this is still new to people. And looking at those machines all in a row with the start screen, I thought to myself, not for the first time, that people are going to see those things in stores, and they're going to want to buy them. They're going to get excited by it. It's so much prettier than an iPad. It's not even close.
Yeah,
and when they find out that this thing is a real Windows computer and can run Office and do all that stuff, I think it's going to be a big deal yet again. I think they're blowing it by not getting people excited about it. It's almost like they're undercutting this natural advantage that they have with a product that really is pretty decent. And by not talking about it, doubt is creeping in. And influencers, people who are tech enthusiasts and so forth, are questioning everything they do because they don't talk about it.
Well, here's the thing. Let's go into a conspiracy. Maybe they're questioning everything they're doing over there.
Well, you better hope not. I would like to think that there's a plan.
Yeah.
Look, the guys who are making Windows, and I know some of them personally, are not just good people. They're really smart people. They know what they're doing. I mean, I have to believe there's a plan. But, I also feel very strongly that Microsoft is not Apple, and thus their approach to marketing this stuff or to communicating this stuff has to be different.
Well, one thing that Microsoft did do is they outlined, they set out their outlines for their Windows 8 tablets running ARM chipsets, which
and not just ARM, but also Intel.
Also Intel too. But the ARM is saying that they won't have the option to switch off Secure Boot.
Yes.
Okay.
But right. which some people have taken as a sort of an anti-Linux thing because apparently Linux is still a thing that I wasn't even aware of. That's obviously ludicrous, that argument. You got to Apple doesn't allow third parties to install another OS on an iPad, and I don't believe there was ever a big uproar over that. I mean, this is the same thing. You got to remember the ARM-based Windows devices are devices. You know, they're meant to be like toasters. They're an enclosed solution. They're supposed to be like that. They're supposed to be more reliable, something you can't screw with.
I mean, but the specs, I agree with the specs. I think the specs are great. You're talking about, it has to have Bluetooth. It has to have 720p camera. The resolution has to be 1366 by 768. They have to include at least one USB port. So this is, I mean, you're not going to get a low-end crappy ARM device.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
you can.
Could. I mean, so the lowest end version would be something that has like 10 gigabytes of free space left on the solid state storage.
Yeah, it
would have a 1366 by 768 screen. But yeah, I mean, compared to what's out today from the Android market, this is definitely a step up.
Definitely a step up. Yeah,
definitely a step up.
But how is the pricing going to affect this? That's
well, I don't. I saw something. Of course, it must have been on a Mac-oriented site. It was in my RSS reader this morning, but it said something along the line. This is a headline. I didn't read the story because you have to understand. I see a headline like this and I laugh and I just keep going. But the headline said, "Windows 8 tablets to cost at least $100 more than iPad."
I saw the one. Where it said,
well, duh. It's a
Well, yeah, I think that one. See, this is the problem. I saw one that said Intel-based Windows 8 tablets to be $690. To be lower, the lowest it'll be is like $699 for Intel-based. Windows 8 tablets.
I don't know.
I mean, that was the story that I saw, but I've also seen Windows 8 tablets to be $699 because most of these people that are covering it don't even know. You got to remember
that Windows 8 based devices, whatever they are, tablets, convertible PCs, laptops, desktops, all the different form factors, these things can go all the way down to a 7-inch screen. So the smallest Android tablet today is probably a 7-something inch screen, somewhere in there, right? So you got to picture a device like that. Even at that size, it's going to have a 1366 by 768 resolution. It's going to have the camera, USB, the connectors, all the buttons they're supposed to have, all that stuff. 5-point touch screen. That's a pretty serious little device right there.
I mean, this is going to be really the year of the tablet, I think. By for the fourth quarter, it's really going to be the battle of the tablets and who's going to kind of survive.
I would space it a little more and say it's going to be the year of mobile computing because it's tablets plus Ultrabooks, I think.
Tablets plus
and those devices that sit in the middle that do both, right? There's going to be the convertible things like that Lenovo IdeaPad that we saw, the Yoga Split. And then there will also be those devices that are sort of like the Asus Transformer where maybe you buy the tablet and optionally you can plug it into a keyboard base and it turns into a real computer. These things are all related or at least semi-related, and I think they're going to form the next generation, this generation, if you will, of kind of mainstream computing devices.
I mean, this Yoga tablet is the perfect Windows 8 tablet.
Yeah, I mean, yes, right. So I was just looking at that again. It's a 1600 by 900 screen, a 3.1 pounds, which is fantastic for a laptop and an Ultrabook even. Not fantastic for an iPad. I mean, and a lot of people misunderstand that. This thing costs this thing weighs like 2 or 3 times as much as an iPad, right? But it's a computer. You got to remember, it's not a tablet. It's a computer that can be turned into a tablet if you want to use it in that fashion. It's a computer first,
which we've seen. I mean, by the way, we've seen this sort of device for many, many years. This is not the first ever device that could do this.
No, but it does it in a semi-unique way. It has, it has that unique kind of 360-degree latch and all that kind of stuff. And the key, though, here, and I think this is maybe we've kind of almost skipped over this in a way, is Windows 8, right? Because Windows 8, if successful, and by successful I don't mean sell well, but successful in implementation, will have 2 environments. We'll have that touch-based environment, the Metro Start screen, that will be the kind of iPad device-type UI, and the Windows desktop that lets you run all the classic Windows applications. If that melding of 2 different things works, I mean, that's a breakthrough right there because, Apple sells Macs and they sell iPads and Microsoft can sell Windows and it works on everything.
By the way, there was some controversy on your website this week but with an image that you posted saying, why can't Windows 8 look like this?
Yeah. Well, let's be clear. Why can't the Windows 8 desktop look
desktop?
Like this? In other words, a lot of people misunderstood what I was saying.
Which, by the way, whatever you posted and wherever you got it is one of the most beautiful UIs that I've seen. I think it's a stunning UI.
I drew it.
Oh, did you?
I made it. It's not real. I mean, but my thought was, look, I accept that on a Windows tablet, a small portable device, you're going to want the Metro stuff. And I do believe, and I know that there are going to be thousands and thousands of apps. It will be great. Fine. But I also think that there are a lot in this. We'll go back to that Steve Jobs car truck thing. There are going to be a lot of trucks, and trucks are, I've got a 27-inch screen on my computer. It happens to be a huge honking desktop computer, which I get is going away, but there will always be some of those. Even people with tablets will want to come home, put it into a dock, and connect it to a larger screen. Now, in a case like that, I don't think that there should be a Metro and a desktop. I mean, I think there can be, but I'm saying, why can't I access those Metro apps that I'm starting to love now on Windows 8? Why can't I just access them from the desktop? I have a desktop that's 1920 by 1080. Why can't I run Metro-style apps in Windows on top of my other applications? Why can't I see part of the start screen kind of on top of the desktop? Why can't I pin tiles there as well as on the start screen?
Yeah, why can't?
I don't. To me, maybe it's a little too pragmatic, or maybe it's just a little too early. Maybe that's something that that's for Windows 9. I don't know, but I didn't put that up thinking they were going to change anything. I was just saying, sort of rhetorically, why isn't this what we're getting?
But do you think that the desktop UI is going to survive the next couple of versions of Windows? I mean, to me. Yeah. And the vibe that they're kind of putting out there is that this is
it will depend on how
stuff.
Successful Windows 8 is, and this time I mean successful in a marketplace, right?
I mean, this is the epitome of legacy plaguing Windows, right?
The way that Microsoft does things is they drop old technology very slowly. So if they followed the path that they've always followed, Windows 9, Windows 10 will still have a desktop.
We're going to have it till 2038.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean Microsoft's not a different company now, and it doesn't mean that this thing is very successful, and who knows? They may split the market, much like Apple does with iPad and Mac. Maybe they'll have Windows devices and Windows PCs, and they'll be kind of two different things. I don't know. I can only speculate. I mean, I think that the future of the desktop is going to depend very heavily on how well received the start screen is. But again, ironically, in a way, I think that you could get people to accept Metro-style apps more if you made them accessible on the desktop as well, which was the point of it.
So I want to move on to something. So now we're in the situation where we're going to have the Windows 8 devices in the tablet form, which really I'm really excited for. And that will be my next tablet. Will be a Windows 8 tablet. I don't know if I'll go with ARM or I'll go with an Intel-based one, but whatever is out and that I like, I'll pick up. The iPad 3 is supposed to come out this year. Mm-hmm. The rumors are that it's going to be a evolutionary device and not this revolutionary super thin device, because it's actually going thicker from what people have said. It's going, I think they said 1 millimeter thicker, which is nothing, but
that's ridiculous.
Oh my God, how could it go thicker?
The outrage.
But it's going to support LTE. It's going to have an HD screen.
Yep.
But again,
so
I think
all sounds very far-fetched to me because it's so obvious.
It's so obvious, yeah. But here's my point with this. The iPad is, yes, it's a new device. It's only a couple years old, but the UI is a old-looking UI compared to what Microsoft is doing currently, because the Microsoft UI is very cutting edge at this moment. And Android has become this cutting edge UI also. It's different. It's very futuristic. It has different kind of transitions, while the iOS has kind of stood still. I don't think the story is the device for them anymore, because we know that they can make a device that people want. It's what are they going to do with this operating system and where are they headed? Because if they hang on to this a little longer, yes, it's consistent, it's stable, they know what people know what they're getting into, but they do have to tweak this. And by tweak, I mean change it
completely, right?
Yeah,
it's so old-fashioned. It is designed around an MS-DOS style usage model where you're basically just doing one thing full screen at a time, and there's very little in the way of other things. They're starting to introduce this notion of a slide down notification drawer, which is an overlay on top of whatever you're doing. But really, beyond that, it's it's kind of a difficult model for moving between applications and all that kind of stuff. So, I expect it to get more sophisticated. Whether that happens this year or not, I don't know. If they're going to announce an iPad 3 in February and ship one in March, the UI on that thing is not going to be dramatically different. From
No, it's going to be the same thing. I mean, I don't think it's going to be changed at all.
There's so much they could do, though, even before overhauling it. They have a very hard. Well, I'm sorry. The UI they have is not very customizable in the sense that you can have this grid of icons and you can organize them how you want. You can put them in folders, but you can't leave spaces. Like on an Android device, you could say, I want 3 icons down here, and I want those on a row going up the side, and I want all this space to be empty because I looking at the picture that's behind there. You can't do that on an iPad or any iOS device. So that would be something very easy to fix. They should do that. Apple has had widgets or gadgets, I can't remember what they call them, in macOS 10 for a long time. Android has them now on the phones and devices. iOS should have something like that too, and this would give them some way to fight back against both what's available on Android and those live tiles that we have on Windows Phone and soon we'll have on Windows 8. Those are two things that I feel like they could easily add to iOS 6, and have it be something that happens next year.
I mean, now they have two battles. I mean, not only do they have to play catch up with the operating system, and again, I'm not criticizing its function because by far, in my opinion, I think it works the best and it's the safest bet right now as a great operating system for a mobile device as far as tablets and phones.
I'm bored, but I'm bored by all that
stuff. And
I
that's
just don't. That's not really where the excitement is, but of course, Apple is inherently exciting. I mean, so they could release iPad 3 with iOS 5.02 or whatever they call it, and people still stand in line. But I do feel like they have to do something. If that thing has a high resolution screen, that gives you, depending on what the res is, the possibility of running tiled iPad apps, side by side. That would be very interesting.
I mean, I guess we're gonna find out where they're going with the next release of OS X. I mean, well, whatever they call it, right? At this point, because we don't know if it's going to be the same thing. But OS X is due for an overhaul, and we're seeing the merger of these mobile and the desktop UIs and the OS. Mm-hmm. So it's a weird situation there, right? Because Microsoft kind of has the advantage.
Yeah. What if there was a well on the side of the iPad where you could run iPhone apps as widgets or gadgets or whatever next to a full screen iPad app?
Yeah.
There's all kinds of little possibilities there.
I just feel very restricted.
Really
I mean, you said it before. I feel very restricted when I use the iPad compared to using something else at this point. And I didn't really get that sense until I got Ice Cream Sandwich.
Well, that's the thing. So on Android, and this is true of Honeycomb as well, if you have a tablet, they made some interesting changes to the UI so that you can do things by, well, first they've removed the need for buttons, which is very interesting. And actually, I have to say that works pretty well, even though that more menu can be in different places sometimes, depending on what app it is and so forth. Android has always had that notion of notifications and these slide up drawers and so forth. And what they started in the Honeycomb UI, which was the tablet one, and now that they have an Ice Cream Sandwich, it's not perfect, but it's actually pretty good, and certainly more forward leaning than what you see with the iOS stuff.
Yes. So you've had a week now with the Nexus.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's okay. I honestly, some people.
But give me your review because I'm curious.
I'm looking at Android because they think I'm dumping Windows Phone. Some others perhaps are thinking I'm not going to give it like a fair shake because I like Windows too much or something. But I prefer Windows Phone to this OS, whatever that's worth. I'm not going to stop using Windows Phone. The phone itself, I mean, this exact model, it's fairly thick and heavy. It doesn't get great battery life, as you know. Some of the stuff is great. People talk about fragmentation, and I can tell you, I've already seen it. So for example, there are apps that just will not install in this version of the OS. So I don't know. I mean, it's cleaner looking. It's more refined. It looks like something I don't have this version on a tablet, but it's very similar, like I said, to the tablet version. It looks like something that would work very well across phone or tablet. You kind of have to break it down to the OS and then the phone. You know, I don't know that I would be happy with this as a phone, as my only phone, because of the battery life stuff. And
I mean, the battery life is awful. I mean, that is true. Yeah. And the 4G,
it's notably bad. Yeah.
Yeah, which I have right
here.
Here.
It's you know, it's like it's a dead weight.
No, it's a big phone. It's a very big phone.
Yeah.
I kind of got used to it, and I was surprised because I didn't want to get a big phone. But going from this, and then I get one of these. Let me just grab that. I grab one of these, and I'm like, oh my God.
It's like this is, it's
so
like squinting
small.
at a postage stamp.
Yeah, I mean, it's so small compared to it. Yeah. So I think if it was 4.3 inch, it would have been a better device. I think it's a little too big, but you're talking about, 0.3 inches.
Yeah, but it makes a difference when you're talking about 4 point something inches. I mean, that does make a difference. I think the Samsung Focus is probably 4.3. But the Samsung Focus, which is that Windows phone, is way thinner, way lighter. It's got way better battery life. And, I happen to prefer the UI or whatever, but I mean, that's different people have different opinions about that stuff, but it performs great. I don't know. I don't really, I guess I expected to like it more. I kind of go into Android with a little bit of that begrudging thing, because I still feel like Android is this horrible ripoff in many ways, but I will give them credit because in this version of the OS, they do seem to be going their own way with certain things.
Yeah, and it looks like something that people would want to use rather than being forced to use because it's an option.
Yeah, and it does make the 2.x stuff look really old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is hard to go back to an older Android device.
Yeah, and I'm surprised on how many people actually... I've actually read a lot of reviewers, and they say how they like gingerbread over ice cream sandwich, and I'm blown away by that.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's people get used to
away.
things. I think they're just familiar with it.
By the way, we have Kieran, one of my hosts on the network here in studio. He's sitting here, actually. Hey, Kieran. There he is. And he has no idea what we're talking about, and he just gave me the strangest look when I said ginger ice cream sandwich is better than gingerbread, not understanding what the hell I'm talking about. Right. And he's like, I thought this was a tech show. Like, you're talking about pastry.
Sure.
Like, you're talking about cookies.
Pastry, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. So he's giving me looks while we're doing the show, not understanding what this is. Because, by the way, he has an Android phone. He's an Android user. Yeah. What phone is that? The Evo. He has the Evo.
Right.
But, they've saturated the market, and it works for them in that way, and they could scream about market share all they want. But it is an interesting time because now what are our options? Who's going to survive this? Because now we have iOS, which is surprisingly the most outdated-looking operating system on the market.
Right. Well, but that makes sense.
It makes sense. Still, again, by the way, disclaimer, I still think it's...
Hey, if my mother called and said, I'm getting a smartphone, which one should I get?
Get an iPhone.
I probably would tell her to get an iPhone because it's safe.
Yeah. By the way, if you are in the chat, I want to put this out here again. If you're watching on any number of our feeds, Stickam, Justin TV, Ustream, we have a great chat room here on our website, gfqlive.tv. About 80 people in there right now currently. Really cool to see everybody in there. But if you're in there, you could change your nickname to whatever you want it to be. If you click on menu and change nickname, we need a way better system than what we're doing right now with this.
You should make them select a nickname when they log in.
Yeah. Yeah, and that gets confusing too. We should do that. Click on menu and change nickname, and you can make your nickname whatever you want. You could make Paul Loves Android. Oh my God! As I said that, somebody just registered Paul Loves Android. That is so funny.
I love is a strong.
That is so funny. I was just saying, and the name just popped up on the chat. That's hysterical.
It's a strong phrase. I don't know love, but
yeah. So
I'm coexisting. I think that's the way to say it.
We use you guys as a source for many things. So Paul, I want to ask you, like, out of all the things that you saw, what are you excited about this year? Because 2012 so far, if you go based on CES, it's not much happening, but I am really excited about Windows 8 and the beta's coming out next month, which I'll be definitely playing around with. I stayed away from the preview
Which is smart.
Because I don't want to base my opinion on this based on something that is not functioning.
It's half finished.
Yeah. So I stayed away from it. I want to try the beta next month, but there's a couple questions here. A, is that going to be the big story of 2012?
Yeah.
Or
yeah. Okay. What's the other one? I'm sorry.
Or is it going to be something else? I mean, currently. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that's going to be a huge story? Oh my God, this thing is out. It's going to change everything.
It is the big story, right? Windows 8 is the only big story of this year in many ways, because the other stuff that kind of revolves around it always comes back to Windows 8. So tablets, Ultrabooks always comes back to Windows 8. Apple will release another iPad. They'll probably update their MacBooks and blah, blah, blah. But this is all just evolutionary stuff. Android, same thing. I mean, we're going to see a slew of Android devices, but come on, we already know what the new version of the OS is. That okay. Windows 8, whether it's successful or not, whether it arrives early or not, is ultimately what all this stuff kind of revolves around. So to me, it is the big story. I mean, I think about stuff like Windows Phone 8, which is even more mysterious than Windows 8, because we don't know if Windows Phone 8 is going to be based on Windows 8 or just based on the next version of Windows Phone.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen with iOS either, and that's another story that people don't talk about. What's the next version of iOS going to be based on? Is it going to merge the OSs or the operating systems, or is it going to be still kept separate?
We'll see, but I give Microsoft a little credit here, because one of the things they're doing with Windows 8 is being very aggressive, and a lot of even my why doesn't Windows 8 desktop look like this post is in many ways a response to how aggressive they're being by saying, no, we're doing it this way. And that's something they kind of don't do typically. Whereas Apple now has settled into this kind of a rut where they're, all of a sudden for the first time, they have a huge audience of customers. And that now they're finding that they have to kind of support those guys. And it may be a little too radical for them to really change the iPad UI. And by the way, I hope to be completely proven wrong on that one. I would love for them to do something nuts, but I'm just saying my take on it, looking at them, is that, now they have hundreds of millions of customers.
Yeah.
And, you have to treat those people differently. It's not like the Mac when you had like 25, 50 million, whatever that is. They have hundreds of millions now. So you have to kind of respect that market. You have to take them along with you. You can't just abandon people like you did in the past. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. In our notes, you wrote something interesting. And I do want to go on to this topic. Is there room for a third mobile OS?
Yeah, I think this year, this is, again, in many ways a sub-story to the Windows 8 stuff, but I think this year is kind of make or break for Windows Phone. Windows Phone, in my opinion, is superior in many ways to the competition. However, it is a fact that Windows Phone is not sold well. I love this Nokia device that's coming out, the Lumia 900. I will get one.
But again, let me just put it out there. It has not sold well because it has not been represented well on all the major carriers. That potentially.
The why of it almost doesn't matter. It's just a fact that it hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. So this year, whatever is wrong with Windows Phone needs to be fixed. If it's not, I think. It might be over. I mean, I don't know how long you can sustain losing in a market where the other two are just really roaring out of the gates and really taking off. It may work out that the smartphone industry, the mobile industry, is like the PC industry, where we only have two major players. It may not, but we'll see. Right now, they're not doing so great. So yeah. I want desperately for Windows Phone to do well. I love Windows Phone. I think that it is better than the other stuff. I really do prefer it. I mean, I got this new Android phone. It's the very latest one. It's something I love technology. I mean, but I go back to my other phone. I prefer the Windows Phone. I just do.
But what do you think is going to happen with BlackBerry? I mean, RIM is announcing a new tablet for 2012, which I find hysterical because the other one did so well, and they're in such great shape to put out another tablet. RIM by the end of the year, right. I mean, this could be a totally different game. We could see RIM going bye-bye and kind of
I've already predicted that RIM, as it exists now, will be gone by the end of this year. They are spiraling the drain so fast that they will have to be sold or merge or have a major shakeup where their founders are expelled from the company or whatever. But this has to change. and their announcements about this tablet and their plans for BlackBerry 10 and all this are not going to do that. We are going to sell yet another tablet that no one's going to buy.
It's going to be expensive also.
It's not a comeback plan. That's stupid.
I don't know, but they really, what can they do as a comeback plan? I mean, let's talk about that. They really can't do much as a comeback plan because the brand is tarnished. The management is when a company has two CEOs, that's a really bad sign.
It is in this case.
I mean, and this is a perfect example of that. They've fallen behind in every possible way.
Yeah.
The enterprise market is kind of went its own direction, where they're still, use a BlackBerry, it's secure, but most companies really don't care for that anymore, and everybody's on an iPhone, everybody's on a different phone now. It's not the same world it was in 2008.
No, the advantages of BlackBerry are mostly gone now. I mean, not ironically, but one of the ways that they still have an interesting advantage over the competition is that proprietary network, the one that infamously went down for a little while last fall. But the reason that was such a news story is because that never actually happened. So that's something. I mean, they have assets, but
they have patents. They have a bunch of patents, which is valuable.
Yeah, but that's like the last ditch effort, sell the patents off. I think that if Nokia had not partnered with Microsoft, RIM plus Microsoft would have been very interesting. But now that that's happened, Android, Google doesn't care. They're not going to want that stuff. Apple certainly wants nothing to do with it. And so I don't know what the logical next partnership is for this company, but Palm briefly sold a Windows Mobile phone. That was their little buy time while we move on to the next thing, and then they did WebOS. Maybe they could do something like that, although I can't imagine why anyone would want to buy a RIM-based mobile phone that ran, Windows Phone or Android or something. That would be, once you see that device, that is admission of failure right there.
But again, there are a lot of rumors. One rumor is Amazon would buy them for hardware, which I don't know why Amazon would want to go near them. Because this is not. I
saw one about Samsung as well.
Samsung is another one. People are saying Samsung wants to buy them, but Samsung would buy them and do what?
Samsung has great expertise in phone creation, so I don't know what they need. They have good partners in Microsoft and Google for the OSs. They have I think they have their own OS as well for the lower end phones.
They do, yeah. I mean, this is an interesting thing. What would let's say Samsung would buy them? What would Samsung do with them, and how could Samsung benefit? Okay, fine. You have the patents, you have hardware, and you have software that you're not really sure what's going to happen to it, like QNX. You're really not sure.
I cannot think of a single reason why they would want it. Samsung, as of today, Samsung makes the very best Android tablets that are available right now. They make some of the very best Android handsets that are available now. They make the best Windows Phone handset that's available as of this moment, although that might be changing with that Nokia device. I mean, I don't, they're not hurting. In fact,
I mean, if RIM is
the
smart,
estimates are they're going to be the single biggest smartphone maker of 2012.
I mean, it's a very, in my opinion, you want to gain back the market rather than putting out 15 phones that look exactly the same. Why not take it down to 2 phones, have 2 solid phones, one targeted towards the enterprise user, one targeted towards the at-home consumer, and don't put out as many phones as you do.
You're talking about RIM.
I'm talking about RIM.
Yeah, they have too many phones.
Way too many phones, and they all look the same. That's the problem.
By the way, they have phones with keyboards. They have phones with touchscreens. They have phones with touchscreens and keyboards. They have like this crazy. They also make curiously different versions of the same phone that ship on different different wireless carriers.
Yeah.
They really got to stop doing stuff like that.
No, it's very confusing, and I've always been confused by RIM's branding. It's a very confusing way that they're doing it because you have no idea. I really and this is one of my fallbacks in technology. I have no idea what the go-to phone is for RIM ever. Because every week it seems like
because the first question someone would say is, "Well, what wireless carrier are you on?" Because that's going to change your decision. And then you tell them, and they say, "Well, okay, now is touch important to you? And do you need there's all this like decision-making stuff you have to go through." They need the same thing that Apple needed when Steve Jobs came back, which was someone to go in and just cull. Get rid of crap. They have too much stuff. maybe Android. Maybe they should be making Android tablets at least. I don't know. I mean,
I mean, listen, their
I don't
OS,
think
their
there's room
OS
for their
does support
ecosystem. I
it,
just don't.
right? QNX does support the ability to use Android apps.
You know, I made this. I'll throw this out for Windows Phone too. You know, let's say Windows Phone fails in the marketplace. Like, let's say RIM fails in the marketplace or BlackBerry fails. Both of those companies have an interesting opportunity with Android because Android's free and is infinitely malleable. So
Paul, you're forgetting something.
What's that?
What else is free right now?
Oh, WebOS.
Yeah.
Okay, but
everybody should go to WebOS. Everybody.
Okay, well, all right. Well, either one. I'm just. But the advantage of Android over WebOS is that amazing collection of whatever it is, 400,000 or 500,000 apps. So Microsoft could make an Android handset that would be to Windows Phone as. I'm sorry, that would a Windows Phone handset that would be to Android as is the Kindle Fire to Android, which is a completely different looking environment that is all about their stuff that looks just like Windows Phone, but runs Android apps. Mm-hmm. Just like RIM could do the same and create their BlackBerry experience and then back it with their secure private network, you know, and they could keep all of their core advantages, but take advantage of the stuff that is unique to Android, which in this case, frankly, is the app model. It would just be the app model.
Now, somebody brought up an interesting point. They go, well, Android isn't free. You have to pay for the patents to Microsoft.
And Microsoft doesn't.
Yeah. But I have a question with this.
Yeah.
Does Microsoft have any patents with WebOS?
Well, the owner of WebOS until about 2 weeks ago, whatever it was Microsoft's biggest partner of all, HP. So Microsoft and HP have major cross-licensing agreements. I don't know how the patent indemnification of WebOS occurs now. I would assume HP would still be handling that, but I think it's easy to speculate that Palm had a tremendous number of very valuable patents and that those would carry over to WebOS and would thus protect that system. But
so they carry over the WebOS, so now it's almost like the same game that Microsoft is in. Yes, it's open source, but they own the patents with certain things in Android, and many manufacturers have to pay. So let's say Samsung comes around and says, you know what, we want to start producing WebOS devices. We believe in the operating system. It becomes successful. Does HP go after patent fees, licensing fees to these companies, just like how Microsoft is doing it? Mm-hmm. It could be a very interesting spin by the end of the year.
I guess.
This is my prediction, Paul. My prediction is WebOS, we are going to see at least one major manufacturer. I'm talking about the big ones, HTC. We're not going to see Motorola, so I think it's between Samsung and HTC to put out a WebOS device.
Except, okay, so those companies, it would be safe for them to do that because they make other phones. But the problem is you're just recreating Windows Phone. So the argument is, look, this thing is really good. It's kind of technically superior, or it's superior from a user experience standpoint, which are both probably true. Thus, we will make phones based on this thing. But what's missing in this case is apps. And unfortunately, more than apps, because, you know, it's kind of rudderless right now, and it's not clear where support comes from and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, if Windows Phone's not going to make it, I don't think WebOS can make it either.
Do you think Windows Phone will not make it? Do you think that's an option? Do you think that could possibly happen?
Well,
where Windows Phone
of course it's an option. I mean, you know, I didn't think that the Zune was only going to amount to whatever single-digit market share it ever got at its height. I think the most it ever sold probably was in the 5% range at best.
But there were many things wrong with the Zune, Paul. I mean, one was that they put out that last Zune a little too late.
Yeah, okay.
Which was a great device. It was a great
Sure.
device, but it just came out, you know, a couple of years too late. It was almost like they were playing catch up with the iPhone, the iPod, and they just never really caught on.
Every version of the Zune had something that was, even at that time, some advantage over whatever Apple had with the iPod.
No, Zune Pass is a perfect example of how that was a much better deal than anything else out there.
It didn't take off, so, you know, it doesn't really matter. But you know, Windows Phone, I would give Windows Phone at least the same amount of time Microsoft gave Zune, which is roughly 5 years. Actually, probably less, maybe 4 years, whatever that was. I mean, I would imagine there's at least that much investment. Arguably, a smartphone is far more core to what Microsoft is doing, so maybe it deserves even more than that. Is it possible that they would keep this thing limping along for a decade for whatever reason.
Like Windows Mobile.
Yes. Yeah, sure. I mean,
that's a perfect example of denial.
it certainly got to that point. I mean, yeah. Yes, it did.
You look up denial. It's just the last Windows Mobile phone, which I owned, by the way. I was a big Windows Mobile fan.
Oh, I have. I'm going to be getting rid of it this week, but I have the Palm Trio 850, which is that one Windows Mobile 6 professional device they made, which is beautiful hardware. I have an Acer smartphone that runs Windows Mobile 6.5, which is the final version of that OS, and you can see, like, it certainly was a skin on top of something. It wasn't like a full redo of the OS, but they actually did a pretty decent job with the UI on that version. I got to give them a little bit of credit.
No, I always said, I think I had the HTC Touch Pro, and the Touch Pro 2 was actually a very well done device. Hardware-wise, it was excellent. Software-wise, it really 6.5 was much better than 6.1, I think, at that point. But it was so behind.
Yeah.
And I always said, like, if this phone came out, in 2007, it would have been one of the best-selling phones on the market.
Yep.
But, the iPhone came out and changed the entire platform as we know it.
Yep.
I do want to go into one thing. We saw that as I try to pull up your site, actually, Paul. I can't pull it up. In Windows 8 Server, we're going to see a new file management system.
Yep.
But it is not on the regular. Do you think they would release it? And this is a question that I got for you multiple times. Do you think that it's going to kind of seep over by the time that the operating system is released into
No. The way
user?
they worded it was that this will not be part of Windows 8, but it's even limited in Server, because in Server it's only there for the what they call the file server role. It's like the workload type, for file serving. That's it. That's all it's for. You can't boot off of this thing. It doesn't have quota support. There's all kinds of stuff that's missing. It's very early for this type of thing.
But I guess this is the way we're going to see in Windows 9 it should be implemented all around.
Yeah. So their plan is to implement it in clients, meaning Windows. The one that we run on the PC. They haven't said when. So it could be Windows 8 Service Pack 1. It could be Windows 9. They haven't. I don't think they want to say, because I don't think they know yet. But yes, eventually it will be on the client. It will not be on Windows 8 when it ships out, and whenever it ships.
By the way, the chat room is stating that there's breaking news. Yahoo has announced the resignation of Jerry Yang.
Oh,
Scott Thompson appointed CEO.
Scott Thompson.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the guy who was already. Yeah. So that's a good example too of a company where, unfortunately, I'm sure Jerry Yang was a good guy or whatever, but he was a founder of the company and was kind of holding them back. They could have sold Yahoo for well over its worth to Microsoft, and it's something Microsoft would have regretted for the rest of its natural-born days.
Well, what do you think they would have done? Well, that's
an
an interesting thing. Let's go into that a little bit. What do you think they would have done with the brand of Yahoo? I mean, Yahoo's already implementing Bing, and they're using Bing as a search. So
none of that stuff would have happened. Yahoo would have been their consumer-oriented internet brand. Windows Live Messenger would have gone away. They would have called it Yahoo Messenger. Bing would never exist. They would call it Yahoo Search. They would use this for everything.
But Yahoo, I mean, this is a perfect example. Like, I'm at Yahoo right now. They have some pretty decent services. They have Flickr, which I'm a fan of Flickr. They have, real estate. They have properties that can work.
Yep.
It just, I'm looking at this thing, and it's like I'm going back in time.
I know. Well, yeah. It's weird because it's an internet company. So you're thinking, well, this is kind of like next generation something.
Yeah. It's awful.
Yeah.
It really is awful. And I cannot understand how people still use this. It's convoluted in many ways that when you go in there, you have no idea what you're clicking on.
All right. Well, but these guys have hundreds and hundreds of millions of users. So people are doing it. There are people, I know people who prefer Yahoo Mail for whatever reason, and they use that. They're confused why it doesn't work well on certain mobile OSs and stuff, but whatever. I know people who use it for the sports stuff. I guess they do really good sports news. They do celebrity news, which is a big deal for people.
I'm a big celebrity gossip fan. I'm dying to know what's going to happen with the Kardashians this season.
Yeah, I think we all are, really. But it's This guy leaving, it's hard to, I think, I've not founded a company, but I would imagine it's very hard to leave a company that you found. And I think it was just like it was very hard for him to give it over to Microsoft, even though it would have made him one of the richest people on earth. So this is belated, and it's unfortunate because he ultimately harmed his company by not leaving any sooner, because this guy has no idea what he's doing.
Yeah. It is sad. I mean, and Bing has done a very. I don't necessarily use Bing that often. I do for certain things, and I find that it's better than Google. I think the image search is much better than Google. I think the video search is much better than Google. But I'm just so stuck into Google. I can't leave.
Bing is a lot like the Zune in some ways, right? Where you can say, well, yeah, there are a couple things that are nicer. I think for the general search stuff, it's probably fine. It's probably just as good. I will say every time I visit the Bing webpage, I think, oh, this is pretty. This is nice. It's nice. I'm not really clear how the pretty picture helps me search for anything, but it's it's nice looking.
But here's a weird thing. Like I Bing search myself, and 90% of the images are not me.
I often use Google and or Bing to search for stuff that's on my website, my own website.
Yeah.
Because it's my site search is so terrible right now. Although I guess we're going to change that soon.
Yeah. Fashion designer Lauren Zarian pops up over and over again.
Oh.
Instead of me.
Damn. Are you doing image search?
Yeah, I'm doing image search. And I'm getting like really like somebody's class graduation.
Jessica Alba is #1 on image search.
I saw that. I wonder what happened.
Senator Tree.
It is interesting, though, how they're doing that. I don't know, Paul. It's interesting where we're at right now with technology and the way it's headed. It's this bizarre world with like 15 different standards for everything. And I thought it would kind of get more unified, but it seems like it's not.
Well, I think it is going to get more unified. I mean, that's kind of the problem for Windows Phone, right? I mean, is the unification that occurs in the mobile industry too? Because if it is, they're kind of screwed. Unless something changes dramatically this year, I don't expect that, but that would be great. That would be really great.
Have we found out? And this is one thing that I've been wanting to know what they're going to do with, and I'm curious what they're going to do in Windows 8 is. Are they going to implement, just like how iTunes has implemented, Apple has implemented iTunes as the go-to music player of sorts. Are they somehow going to merge, I guess, Windows Media Player and Zune into one type of device, one type of software?
Yeah.
I would like to see that.
One of many mysteries around Windows 8.
I mean, they have that platform, right? They have an amazing platform for people to get stuff, and it's really not being utilized in Windows as it should be.
Microsoft goes off on these trends sometimes where they have too many versions of the same thing, too many instant messaging programs, too many PC synchronization programs. Right now they have too many digital media player solutions. So I hope they figure that out. There are some good ideas in the Zune software, the PC software. There are interesting capabilities in Media Center and in Windows Media Player. They've already indicated that Media Center will continue in Windows 8, although it's not clear if that means it is, in fact, just the same version of Media Center we've always had. I don't know. I mean, we don't know yet. So, I mean, hopefully that happens with the beta. Hopefully we see, because right now we just don't know.
When in February are we expecting it?
They've said late February.
Late February. Okay, so probably. When do you expect to get it?
Late February.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. Do I expect them to give it to us early? That'd be nice.
Yeah.
For reviewers or whatever. I hope so.
Well, what's funny is that with Windows 7 we had all those Chinese builds being leaked.
Right. So we still see that. I mean, that stuff is still happening.
But it seems like people are not as excited about that. Like before, I remember Windows 7, like we had every week, like, oh, this new build is leaked and here's some features, but we're not really getting that as much. And I wonder if it's because we're kind of waiting for that beta to come out because we expect the beta to be given out to everybody.
Yeah, I hope to get it earlier than that. I'm certainly not above downloading a leaked Chinese build so I can find out what's going on. I would be happy to do that, but I'd rather get it from Microsoft. I mean, I'd rather there'd be some form of engagement there. We'll see what again, they're being very secretive. I mean, I could picture them giving it to reviewers a little bit early so we could have time to write about it. I could picture them not doing that just because they do this kind of weird, spiteful thing sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's part of the whole frustration around the way they communicate things.
Yeah. It is time to wrap it up, Paul. We are an hour in. That means Paul's time is running out, and it's part of our contract where he has to be out of here within the hour, or
Thank
I
you
lose
for
points.
finally acknowledging that.
Yeah, I had to say something, Paul. I'm sorry. Go to our website, guysfromqueens.com. You can also go to our streaming site, gfqlive.tv. Check out all our shows. We broadcast pretty much every single day. You can check out Paul's site, winsupersite.com. You could also follow Paul on Twitter at Thurrott. I'm at Andrew Zarian, so follow me too. I have pretty much nothing to say ever, except I retweet Paul and I talk to Paul. Paul's like my best friend on Twitter. Nobody else talks to me like Paul does.
That's right.
Paul actually engages in my nonsense, which is excellent.
I didn't realize it was meant for the for the other or whatever.
Yeah, I'll just put something out. Paul's like, exactly. I'm like, oh, look, someone commented. He's my new best friend. Paul, you could also check out Paul every Thursday afternoon, 2 p.m. East on Windows Weekly with Mary Jo Foley on the Twit Network. One of my favorite shows, actually. One of my favorite podcasts. I listen all the time. I like it when Mary Jo talks about beer.
She's
a big beer fan.
Yes, she is.
I'm actually doing a podcast tonight. Your friends, actually, that you went to, that you met at the event in New York.
Mm-hmm. Which ones?
Chris.
Yeah.
I'm doing his podcast tonight at 9:30. I don't know if they broadcast live or they just record.
Okay.
But what I'm going to
ask
doing,
him why have I not been invited to this podcast?
Do you want to pop in?
No, I can't do it tonight. I'm going out to dinner.
Oh, okay.
But,
yeah, I'll ask him.
It's like you get invited, but I don't. I don't know.
Yeah,
so.
Rod, actually, Chris and Rod do a show, and Rod is not there. I think he's on vacation, so it's me and Chris and somebody else, I'm assuming. But in the way that my system works is I can't turn off my feed. So I'll probably be talking, and it probably will be going over my feed, unless he's not okay with that. So then I might turn it off. But if you come back around 9:30 East, I should be doing that podcast. It should be a lot of fun because they do a lot of phone stuff, and I'll be snarky, and I probably will drink by then. Nice. By 9:30, I should be loaded.
They were great guys.
Nice dudes. I had a good time with them.
That day. That was a tough day, but
yeah, and I was late to your event, but.
I wasn't going to.
I think that was all the plugs, and I think we could wrap it up for today. That's it for What the Tech. We'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.